Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to talk about drop shot fishing. It's one of my favorite ways to fish. I do it every year. If you live up here in the Northeast, it's like a necessity to fish a drop shot and to know everything about it. So I have a lot of experience fishing this thing around, different ways to fish it, different baits, different riggings, all that kind of stuff. So we're going to talk about one of my favorite ways to rig this up today and show you everything you need to know to catch more fish on a drop shot. This right here is your standard drop shot rig, Berkeley flatworm. This is just a VMC finesse Nico hook. I have it threaded on there, or you could nose hook this bait, and then a 3/8 ounce drop shot weight down here at the bottom. This is your standard drop shot rig that almost everyone's gonna fish when you're smallmouth fishing, finesse fishing, a small 4-inch plastic. There's a way to fish a drop shot. I've been doing it for the past couple years, especially up here in the Northeast. It catches big largemouth bass. You can catch some smallmouth doing it too, but it's more for largemouth. If you fish down south, I've done it down there too. If you fish on grass fisheries, places that have brush piles, stuff like that, we're gonna break down that entire setup right here to have you catching some more largemouth and just a different way to approach the drop shot rig. So the first thing we're gonna do to go ahead and get this thing set up, we're gonna walk you through the whole setup and what we're looking at here. Right here, this is a Shimano Sedona 2500 on a cash and core spinning rod. This is the 7-foot medium fast action. It's the same drop shot rod that I'll use for my regular drop shots. I don't do the medium light thing. I save that for my Ned rigs. I like a little backbone in my drop shot rod, and this will handle a smallmouth just fine. So that's the way that I like to rig up my standard drop shot, and it's the same way I'll rig up this drop shot too. So I have 15-pound test lime green braid to an 8-pound test fluorocarbon leader. I usually go to like 8 to 12. It depends on what you're fishing. If I'm fishing edges of grass where there's not a lot of stuff for them to hang me up in, I might go with 8 if the water's really clear. 10 is my usual go-to, and then if I'm fishing some heavier brush piles or stuff like that, I'll go to 12 so you have that abrasion resistance. Really just depends on your cover. Choose your fluorocarbon leader accordingly and put on about 12 to 15 foot of it and you'll be good to go. So that's the rod and reel setup. We keep it exactly the same. Then we're gonna come down here to our actual bait itself. And we're gonna get rid of all this because we don't want this for our largemouth fishing. This is good for smallmouth, but we're gonna do it a little bit differently for largemouth. So we're gonna go ahead and chop this off, and when we're gonna get out the components we need to make this largemouth rig. So we'll cut this guy off here. We'll get right back to it here in a second. All right, so it looks like we haven't changed much out here, but we made a couple swaps. So what we got here, this is a VMC Finesse Nico hook, the exact same hook that I just had on there. This was a size 4 on the last one and I thread my bait on it. This is a size 2 odd. It's much bigger. It's a straight shank hook that has a keeper here, a little fluorocarbon keeper. That's gonna be very important. What I'm gonna do with this guy here, I'm just gonna tie this on with your simple Palomar knot. So I'll go ahead and take the line, I go through the front of the eye, I come back through the back of the eye, I pull a leader however much I think I'll need. Usually I do like 18 to 24 inches. I'll do my overhand knot like I usually do on my Palomar, go around the hook, and then always wet your knot before you pull it down, especially on some lighter line. That's key to not breaking off. Pull that thing tight, and then you'll take your tag end and you go back down through the top of the hook so that you can get your hook to stand out straight on the shank there. So not only is this how you rig a drop shot entirely, this is gonna be a little bit of a change up to what we're usually doing for smallmouth. So then the next piece of equipment that I have here, same stick weight that I just had on that one. These are lead ones. I just pour them myself, honestly, because they're cheaper. I burn through a ton of drop shot weights, so I just pour them myself. When I break them off, I'm not upset about it. You can buy the little keepers, 100 of them for $9, and the lead is like $3 a pound, and then it just takes 30 seconds to pour them. So I just pour a bunch every winter, keep them in Ziploc bags, and I'll replenish my tackle box throughout the year. I fish a drop shot a lot. Now you'll decide how long you want to make your leader here. I'm gonna just go ahead and put this on here wherever I want. And usually like 18 inches is good to go. You can make it longer, shorter, whatever you feel. If you have grass, I talked a lot about fishing this around grass. If you are side scanning the grass and you see that it's growing 2 foot off the bottom, make your leader like 2.5 foot and your bait will sit above the grass. So you can do stuff like that to work around the type of cover that you're fishing. Usually when I'm fishing brush piles and stuff like that, 18 inches is probably about good. Now, these keepers have that friction lock in there that you usually just pinch your line in. I'll tell you one piece of advice right now with a drop shot. If you just pinch your line in there, as soon as this gets stuck in a rock, it's just gonna pull right out because it's not that tight on there. So what I do is I will take this and just tie 2 overhand knots after I pinch it in that clip there, real fast, just literally granny knots, overhand knots, whatever you want to call them. I'll just tie 2 of them on there and pull that a little bit tighter. Now, if you get stuck in a rock or a brush pile, it will not just pull off of there. Now, it won't break your entire thing off because your Palomar knot is stronger than an overhand knot. So when you get this stuck in there, you can actually work your bait. I've had this happen numerous times. You get stuck in a rock, you can still work your bait a little bit and a fish will either grab it and you set the hook, it'll snap this weight off and you still land the fish, or you can just snap off your weight and reel back your hook and tie a new weight on because you'll still have all this tag in. It'll break right at the knot right there. You'll still have all this tag in. You just tie a new weight on and get back to fishing. So that's the way that I like to rig up my actual drop shot rig, no matter which type you're using. If you're using a nose hook, split shot drop shot hook, this one, the VMC Finesse Nico, that's the same way I rig up my drop shot every single time, no matter what type of fish I'm fishing for. Now, I talked about having that 2-aught hook on there. This is the worm that I'm going to use no matter what for a largemouth bass. I have an entire box of these. I replenish them every year. It's a super finesse way to fish. It's the perfect drop shot worm and it catches a ton of fish, and that's going to be the Robo worm. I like the 6-inch for largemouth. You can go to a 4.5 if you fish ponds, smaller fish, whatever, but you'll be surprised how many fish can still eat this 6-inch worm just fine. I catch a ton of fish on it. It's no real big deal to those fish because it's so skinny. So it's such a small worm. Now the difference here, I'm gonna take this whatever color you want. I have a green pumpkin one on here. I like anything green pumpkin, and I like pink and purple. Those are like my 3 go-to colors. A purple, I think it's Margarita Mutilator, but Morning Dawn and Aaron's Magic are like the only 2 that I buy. I probably buy Robo Worm out of Aaron's Magic and Morning Dawn Robo Worms. Like I just absolutely have them on replen all the time. I got bags out in my garage. It's like my favorite worm ever. So you're just gonna take this, you're gonna center it right in the head of this worm. You're gonna go down to where it bends on your hook, and you're gonna pop it out straight right down below the bottom. You're gonna bring this up to your keeper here. When you get up to the keeper, instead of flipping this worm over, like usually you twist the worm around, you're gonna push it over the keeper upside down. And what that's gonna do, it's gonna rip the channel in the top of the head, not in the bottom. So when you flip it around, once you get past the keeper and pull it back into place, that's gonna stay snug right up against that keeper. And then you're just gonna go ahead and bury your hook in the plastic here, as you would with any Texas rig. Now you have a Texas rig drop shot. So this is my #1 largemouth catcher up here in the Northeast all summer long. I will fish this from the moment they stop bedding all the way through the fall, and I kid you not, is my #1 largemouth catcher up here. I will fish any lake in the Northeast and throw this bait, and it will put fish in the boat time and time and time again. I've fished this in ponds. I will go to any pond that I've ever fished in my entire life. If it has grass, if it has whatever, I will throw this rig and I will catch fish time and time and time again. It is the #1 largemouth catching bait that I have in my tackle box at like all times. This thing, because it's weedless, you can fish it through grass, you can fish it through brush piles. The bait down here, if you have like a pond that has that scum on the bottom, that black slime stuff, it'll catch on your weight, which is fine. Your bait's still up here and can catch fish. I've caught fish in ponds doing that as well. And then when it comes to your weight size, you just have to pick based on how deep you're fishing. So I'll go up to like a 1/4. I've done 1/4 on like TVA lakes when I'm fishing for fish that are offshore on those shell bars and stuff like that. 3/16 is my go-to. That's what I use most of the time. If you're in a pond that has that black slime and stuff like that, the lighter the weight you can use, the better. So I'll go down to an 1/8 and I'll catch fish in ponds doing that. Having this weedless setup is going to allow you to get so many more bites. It'll fish a drop shot in places that those fish never see it. And a lot of people just don't like throwing a drop shot. Like a lot of people will go throw a jig or a big 10-inch worm in a brush pile. If you throw this tiny 6-inch worm in there, you'll get more bites. Those fish are tired of seeing those big worms and stuff like that. It just catches more fish. It'll work time and time again. The hook will come right out. It is very gently buried in that plastic, and the robo worms are so soft that when you set the hook, that hook will come right out and get a good hook set on the fish. You just make sure your drag is tight enough. So you can see I have it where it barely pulls out when I am pulling on it. So make it that tight, you won't break off on your hook set. And then once you hook the fish, you can turn that back down and let that fish play a little bit, or whatever you need to do. This rod has enough backbone to actually drive that hook into this fish's mouth and keep them on all the way to the boat. So that's the setup. Finesse fishing, catches a ton of fish. I will never rig a drop shot another way again after doing this. The only other time that I rig a drop shot differently is when I am purposefully targeting smallmouth bass. I will rig it up on that nose hook like I showed you and fish those 4-inch worms. But other than that, if I'm fishing for largemouth or even spotted bass, I've caught spotted bass doing this as well down on Lake Hartwell. I've caught fish from 40 foot deep on a morning dawn one on Lake Hartwell, deep dropping in brush piles with this. I've caught them in 2 foot of water with an 1/8 ounce weight morning dawn robo worm on the Chesapeake Bay, fishing laydowns in 2 foot of water when the tide gets up on them. I promise you, no matter what conditions, where you're fishing, anything, you rig a drop shot up this way with either a morning dawn or an Aaron's Magic robo worm, you will have fish literally jumping in your boat or on the shore. It works that good. I always have one tied on anywhere I go. If you ever see me around, look in my rod locker, if I let you look in my rod locker, and I promise you I'll have one of these on no matter where I'm at if I'm largemouth fishing. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. There will be a video coming out talking about where you want to fish this, how to find fish using this thing, all that kind of stuff once I get back from iCast. So hit that subscribe button down below if you don't want to miss that. Check out this video right here if you want to see some other drop shot fishing tips. And I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and thanks for watching.